Hello, welcome to my review of Pacific Rim The Black. This is the new Netflix anime series. Side note, I can't play any footage. Netflix have just been blocking this stuff worldwide, copyright claims, you name it, whatever. Which probably goes some way to explaining why any of the trailer reactions I've done, you may not have been notified or it didn't pop up in your recommended, because that's what happens when copyright claims happen. So I can't show any footage. But I chose this image here to talk about my review, and I think this perfectly exemplifies the series quite well in terms of the colour palettes used, the animation style, and ultimately, I guess, what you can sort of expect from it. Now, when I saw the trailers for this, I was really excited. I love the first Pacific Rim, hate Uprising, it's garbage. And I was excited for this. I was excited for the potential of revisiting a world that had, a lot of potential. You know, you watch that first Pacific Rim film and you go, possibilities are endless. You could do anything with this film. You could do absolutely anything with it. And they made Uprising. And it's garbage. That's a shit film. It's terrible in most senses of the word. Now, I actually enjoyed this series, but it's not without its problems. But one of the major ones for me wasn't actually the animation style. Now, this was made by Polygon Studios, or Polygon Pictures, which are the same people who did Godzilla, the Godzilla anime series, the anime movie series that they ran on Netflix. And I guess, look, it's not as bad as that in the animation style. I actually think it looks more hand-drawn than those movies, personally. And I feel that in those movies, when you had moving monsters, that's when you could really tell it was that sort of 3D CGI animation stuff. Whereas in Pacific Rim The Black, it didn't really have that. It didn't have that so much anyway. There was some. Now, if you note, in this picture here, one of the kaijus obviously has their customary bright blue colouring. There's a few scenes where some of the kaijus have that, and then it comes across quite animated, that 3D. But as a good comparison, if you remember, Netflix did the Altered Carbon anime movie, I think it was. That was awful. This is like 10 times better by comparison. Like, this is actually watchable as an animation style. And I know there's a lot of people probably wondering, why am I yammering on about that? Animation matters. There'll be loads of people not watching this because they think it's crap animation style. And I just want to clarify that it's definitely watchable. 100% watchable. So I enjoyed that. And I enjoyed some parts of where they're going with the lore, but again, even in that, it's not without its faults. It took me a little while to clock where this was in the timeline. It's set after Uprising, sometime. They even reference some things that happened in Uprising, but not hugely. I feel that they are trying to distance themselves from it. One of the main complaints of Uprising is the Titans. Were they called? No, they weren't called Titans. Jaegers. I'm getting muddled up now between bloody Godzilla and Pacific Rim. The Jaegers in Uprising were floaty. They could just jump around like ninjas, and you're like, well, where's the weight? Pacific Rim had such weight behind the Jaegers. You felt each step and each movement. And they did a really good job of capturing that for this anime. Like, it feels heavy. It feels slow. It feels cumbersome. Like a machine would be that size. You know, they do as best they can in making them fast, but they're not fast. There's scenes where Atlas Destroyer, which is this Jaeger, is running around, and goddamn, like it's not quick. Like, it's pretty damn slow. Which is what it's supposed to be. So I enjoyed that. The kaiju that they introduce in this are very same-like. Very, very same-like, but not terrible. Now, obviously, we are aware that the precursors in the lore, anyway, behind the movies, The precursors have basically a factory of kaiju. They can just keep replicating more and more kaiju of all the same types, you know. They don't have to just create different ones because they have numerous ones of the same version. So they do have a few of the same in this. And I feel that maybe that's an exploration in cheapness of animation. They're like, well, we've got this model, so we might as well use it again. I don't know, but it fits with the lore, so I don't hate it. One of the key things I really disliked about this, and I'll get on into the story in a minute, is that everyone could just drift together. They couldn't, but they also could. So, coincidentally, a lot of people are able just to drift together and create a stable neural handshake. And they frame it like that for a while, right? They're like, well, no, I'll pilot with you. No, I'll pilot with you. And it's like, whatever happened to Pacific Rim, where you had to match one another's movements and really, you know, nail it down where you were compatible? Not so in this. Not so at all. But then later on, they show a scene where there's scores of people trying to initiate a neural handshake and drift with one person, and then they couldn't. And I was like, well, you need to make up your mind here, because I don't really know what you're depicting. Whether you can do it or you can't. You know? They're kind of just showing it left, right, and centre. So that I didn't like. They upgraded the lore by saying that Jaegers now have AI systems. Quite cool. Didn't hate that idea. They upgraded the lore by saying you could drift with yourself. No. You could drift with past memories stored within log files of former pilots that have managed to pilot a Jaeger by themselves, to then learn to pilot a Jaeger by yourself. Because that's something that happens in this, and the guy doesn't die. And then isn't left with like massive sickness like Stacker Pentecost was. I think it was Stacker Pentecost, wasn't it? Idris Elba's character. Jasper's here. If you didn't see my dog. So that I didn't like that lore. But if you're upgrading the AI and you're upgrading the tech, it makes some sense. But I didn't like it. Like, I didn't like that upgrade. An expansion to the lore. Now, the other elements of this was that apparently Australia, there's just breaches coming out of nowhere. Just all everywhere, these breaches just popping out left, right, and centre. Right, it's just breach babies, splurging all over the place. I was thinking, why? Why Australia? Like, why? Why do they want to overtake Australia? What's the deal with that? But fine, whatever. It works. It works for the story. Didn't hate that either. Then they introduced some very strange things. Very strange things, which I'm going to touch on now when we go into the story. So those are what I liked and disliked. Animation, didn't hate it. Actually quite enjoyed it and I got into it. They had very anime-esque style as well, like in terms of what characters were emoting around and dancing and stuff. Some of it is pretty JDM, Japanese. You know, it's very Japanesey, which I like. You know, if I'm watching anime, I want it to be Japanese. That's what I want it to be like. Sue me, I'm a bit prejudiced towards my anime, I guess. Anyway, we follow these two characters. I can't remember their names. Taylor and Haley, I think their names are. We follow these two characters. They've been left in the Australian outback at basically an oasis by their parents, who are Jaeger pilots, because the black has been initiated across Australia, which I believe is just like a satellite outage. It's like we cut everything with Australia. The whole continent's been compromised. That's what I could understand from it anyway. And they get left there because they have to go get help in their Jaeger. They're Jaeger pilots, so they bugger off. And they're left there for 5 years. They never come back. And through chance circumstance, Haley finds Atlas Destroyer, the Jaeger. But then also Taylor is able to pilot it because he was a former cadet. So a lot of people will be like, oh, gender. No, it's none of that. Yeah, Haley finds it, but Taylor's the only one that can actually pilot it properly. So that's good. And then Haley can only pilot it because she drifts with her brother. And then they share memories and then she can learn that way. Which, yeah, alright. it's a bit of a stretch, but you've got upgraded AI and technology and things. Maybe that explains it, I guess. Anyway, from there, it's their journey of trying to find their parents, basically. They head off to a city called Meridian, I think it was. And they find the Pan-Pacific Defense Corps, the PPDC. Super quick. Try and say that super quick. Where they go into a lab, because they're trying to find power cells for their Jaeger Atlas Destroyer, who coincidentally has no weapons because it's a training Jaeger. I liked that because it puts them in real danger, and they actually lose an arm at one point, which is quite cool. They go down into a lab, and they find a boy who is in liquid. Apparently he's just been there for like 5 years. Power cell keeping him alive. Weird. Doesn't talk, doesn't do anything, and obviously it's like all mysterious and all what's going on with this boy sort of thing. Which you find out later in the series that this is the expansion of the mythos that I'll be curious as to where they take it in the next season, because they leave on a cliffhanger. He's made by the precursors to look like humans, apparently anyway, that's what they deduce, but he can transform into a kaiju. Apparently. But I don't believe that's the case, because if you look at how his kaiju face looks, it is scarily like the imagery that they've put up all over the city, all graffitied of this, you know, the black, this sort of kaiju face. It just looks like his one, as he's a kaiju. So maybe that's the case, or maybe the PPDC did actually create a human kaiju weapon. But who knows? Anyway, so that thing happens. That's super odd. Don't know whether I like that expansion or not yet. We'll have to see how that one goes. This is where they reference Uprising. So the Uprising Wars, they reference the kaiju with the Jaeger drones. And then they say that one of them was immune to the feedback loop and evolved into a biomech. Yeah, bear with me. I'm not bullshitting. This is what they say. Evolved into a biomech that has no allegiance at all, but somehow has allegiance to the boy. So I don't know what's going on there. It's very strange. But anyway, that's interesting. Don't hate it. It's a good way of referencing Uprising and trying to push past it somewhere else. I think that they're trying to be more in line with the original Pacific Rim. But anyway, there's human drama. There's all this other stuff. People are using drift tech as interrogation stuff now. And there's apparently kaiju human messiahs and the sisters who have kaiju as pets and things like this. Little, they're massive kaiju dogs, but they're little by comparison to kaiju anyway. It is an interesting anime. It was not a slog to get through. They're like 20-25 minute episodes. I enjoyed it on a whole, not without its problems. But I hand it on over to you. What do you guys think? Because for me, like, I enjoyed it, but I'll be more intrigued to see where it goes. Let me know your thoughts. Cheers. Take care.